undercover overseas, pretending to work in a job that I'm not, and even being assigned a name that was not mine.
I know the modus operandi of the CIA. The very important thing that you have to understand about Snowden is that he is a manufactured a product of the CIA or the military-industrial complex. Why do I say that? Number one, he follows the modus operandi of the predecessor, Daniel Ellsberg. Both were so-called in the military. Snowden failed the so-called special forces. That's what he claimed. He was never qualified. Daniel Ellsberg was in military intelligence and worked at the State Department as the cover, but was really in the CIA working for General Lansdale. That was 40 years ago. Both came out in terms of a company that was not apparently affiliated with the military intelligence complex. In the case of Ellsberg, it was the RAND Corporation, where I came in and I worked on the Soviet Union. And in the case of Snowden, it was Booz Allen that received $6 billion from the CIA directly. And the head of Booz Allen at the time that Snowden was in there was McTiernan, who was deputy director, acting DCI of the CIA. And now the head of it was McDonnell, who is a naval intelligence officer. And so James Clapper was in Booz Allen, as were many other CIA operatives. And so he came out of the CIA, born, bred out of the CIA. What he said, and what he said specifically in this interview with Brian Williams, where Brian Williams was totally had by an operative, because if you listen to the words that Snowden said, he said very distinctly, I am a CIA spy. I predicted that a year ago. I predicted that on your show 6 months ago. What does that really mean? What that really means is that the CIA, and Snowden in particular, is working with his handlers, who in particular is the man named John Brennan. That's the one name that has not come out repeatedly in his conversation or his indictments. What Snowden said was, I'm against people like Keith Alexander, and I happen to know Keith Alexander. I like him, but that doesn't mean I justify that he had a massive surveillance of the American public. But the two people that Snowden attacked were military officials, one who was particularly very powerful, and that was Keith Alexander.
And that's what you said last year when no one was saying it. You said it was part of a inner CIA Pentagon power struggle, which they now admit Benghazi's a big part of.
Exactly. This is the extension of Benghazi and the CIA and the military fighting out for control of the military-industrial complex, as it's evidenced by companies like SAIC, Booz Allen, MITRE, L3 Corporation. This has nothing to do with the American public, the safety of the American public, the national security, or with the sanctity of our nation. This has to do simply with the fact that the military-industrial complex, particularly the intelligence corporation, could care less about our safety as does the military. Because the military feels, and this is very painful for me to say, having been a Navy captain, that we do not have a nation anymore. We have an army, but we do not have a nation. We have, in America, we have a country, but we do not have an army. And the CIA, military intelligence, National Geospatial Agency, National Security Agency, feels the same way. They don't care about the protection and the national security of America. They haven't really done anything to prevent terrorism, to protect us. What they care about is one simple matter. They want to game out the issue of who gets the most money in the military-industrial complex, particularly in intelligence. That's why I could predict this matter. It's not something I read in tea leaves or I made up. Keith Alexander is one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful individual now in national security. He acquired that power because, contrary to what the CIA was 30 years ago, which was based on human, which is what Snowden said very specifically, and Snowden was very proud of the fact that he was part of an intelligence gathering capacity where you don't have to go to college anymore. And it's true. You just have to be very proficient on the Internet. So people like Snowden were hired by the CIA, went through the National Security Agency, at the same time worked at the Defense Intelligence Agency, because all the other groups, including the CIA, are not as proficient as the National Security Agency.
Sure. And you've worked in the State Department, but mainly from the Army angle, helping found Delta Force, and that's on record.
Correct. I helped found Delta Force with Larry Eagleberg. I'm not going to tell full credit. The reason we didn't have a Delta Force is because we had hostage negotiations 30 years ago. I didn't have the counterpart to what the British had, the SAS, and we needed a key force. And that's why we nurtured, Larry Eagleberger and I nurtured Special Forces and Delta Force so that we could have a precision instrument to go in and strike out people.
Now, we're about to go to break. Just, I want to come back and get into the bigger picture here and where this is all going. But what, for laymen, what is the point then in the warfare inside the establishment? What is the point of Snowden then? What's the objective?
The Snowden point is very simply more money for more intelligence that has nothing to do with the protection of the Republic. The Republic and America is irrelevant to the aggrandizement of private institutions that are affiliated with our intelligence community. So the CIA grows bigger, more inefficient. NSA goes bigger, more inefficient. The Defense Intelligence Agency grows bigger and inefficient, and America is paying a very heavy price while we lose our capacity to really protect ourselves and to garner any sense of economic strength. We are losing our capacity to be a viable republic because our military and our intelligence system is sucking out the very marrow of our existence, which is money, servitude, loyalty, transparency, and honesty.
All right, well, stay there. We got to go to break. Dr. Steve Pieczenik's our guest. StevePieczenik.com is his excellent website. Find out the latest books that are there and more. But we're going to go to break here.
I don't question what you think about me. I got a question for you. Why do you lie? Why do you lie? Why do you lie?
I want to get into what you're saying in a private email to me, and I want to get your full take on this, Dr. Pieczenik. Elliot Rodger and the Santa Monica shooting last week that's been collectively blamed on white males and gun owners, even though half the people he purportedly killed he used a knife on. I want to get your take as a military...
I'll go over it. Remember, I told you Sandy Hook was a false flag, and that came out to be true. This one's a false flag, too.
Well, I want to get into that in a moment, but finishing up with the whole point of Snowden and where this is going. I mean, he seemed extremely confident, I would almost say arrogant in that interview with Brian Williams, like they're trying to rehab him to take him back to the country like Lee Harvey Oswald, who we know was a CIA operative and never joined the Russians.
Yeah, you have to understand, Snowden qua Snowden doesn't mean anything. Snowden's part of the game that the CIA and the intelligence community is playing off of the backdrop of America, Russia, and China. You have to understand, Snowden just represents an institution which really has to take down a much more powerful institution like the National Security Agency, and really wants to garner and create a narrative which is a false narrative. What they want to do, Snowden and his handlers...
So it's just like the FBI and CIA always want to make the other the bad guy.
Exactly.
You're saying it's CIA wanting to get all the blame off it onto the NSA.
Well, not only that, they want to say there's good guys and bad guys. The truth of the matter is this is not about bad guys and good guys. This is about people who want to play games with the American public and taxpayers. And all of them want to play games with the taxpayers because all of our military generals go back into SAC or Booz Allen that gets $6 billion from the CIA. James Clapper, you got, the same thing. You have John Brennan, who's never been brought up on charges of illegal activities on 9/11, Benghazi. He was accused in Benghazi, and I have said it repeatedly. He's been accused of drone attacks, yet the FBI has never investigated him. Secret Service has never investigated him. ATF has never investigated, but it's the one man that Snowden doesn't want to mention. And by that very absence in intelligence and counterintelligence, I can tell you that he's his handler, and that the CIA is very much embedded in this kind of gaming that goes on. And it's Eisenhower who said they have created a legacy of ashes. And it was Jimmy Carter, whom I served, who got rid of 4,000 operatives. It's time now for America to say it's enough with the CIA, enough with our intelligence community. We're going to cut off fundings in general, and then we're going to bring in people who can really understand what is required.
Well, they've tripled the size of the CIA. They're operating domestically, and they've got their minions just running around everywhere. They've had Homeland Security try to recruit every doctor my dad knows to spy on their patients and people. And when they get deeper enough into it, because he managed hundreds of doctors, he just retired,
Yes.
he dug into it and found out it's connected to the CIA. What is the CIA doing, trying to recruit every doctor and dentist?
Well, it's a self-aggrandizement. So what happened is over 30 years in working in the State Department and overseeing the CIA and many opportunities, they have really been dysfunctional. And in the Soviet Union, in Thailand, I had to get rid of their station chief. In Paris, I had to get rid of their station chief. In Panama, I had to get rid of their station chief. In Panama, I had to get rid of some of their operatives. And basically what's happening, it's an organization that's so filled, and I not have anything against this religion, basically Irish Catholic individuals. You have Brennan, McTiernan, you have Donlan, you have Doyle, you have Keith Alexander, all of whom follow the catechism of hierarchy. And with this type of ritualization that's instilled, and I have nothing against Catholics, my family's partly Catholic, you have embedded in the CIA a hierarchy which has this false notion that they have to follow orders irrespective of the legality of the orders. John Brennan has to be called forth in front of a committee, just as Colby was in front of a committee of independent prosecutors, and testify about Benghazi, testify about 9/11, testify about the drone attacks, testify about Snowden, testify about who he knew, because the one name that does not come out is the very name that's involved in all of this, including McTiernan, who was acting head of the CIA. What's happening is the aggrandizement and self-aggrandizement of intelligence communities at the expense of the Republic, that is the expense of the American taxpayer, is out of control, and it's destroying our nation. We do not have more security because it's bigger. We have less security because it's ineffective. And the CIA wants to have the capacity that the NSA had in electronic surveillance, which didn't prove to be better. It just proved to be bigger and more expensive and more deadly to our freedom.
Well, it sounds like a recipe for disaster to have 800,000 private contractors and more than 50 companies with access to all the super secret spy hubs. I mean, that just sounds like a way to be infiltrated by not just foreign governments, but every other corporation.
That's correct.
It sounds like a takedown plan of the country.
Well, it's not purposeful. We're not that clever. In other words, whenever you think that anybody's planning to take it down, whether it's the Council on Foreign Relations, anybody, nobody's that clever. What it is greed, self-aggrandizement, and stupidity.
And by the way, you've been pretty big in the CFR for a long time, but I know got out of it. I mean,
well, it was a waste of my money and time. Because what happened is you have every flotsam and jetsam. It was really like a nursing home for those who weren't able to do anything, and a nursing home for a lot of neocon Jews who did terrible things in 9/11. Richard Haas, Elliot Abrams, you had a whole bunch of them, and Fife, who was still accountable, but they're sitting in the Council on Foreign Relations espousing. They have protection, but I wasn't interested in that. What I'm interested in doing, very simply...
Steve, how would you describe yourself? Because you're Jewish and Catholic, right?
Yeah, I'm Jewish, but my aunt is Catholic. I grew up in Cuba because the American liberal democracy didn't allow us in, thanks to Roosevelt. My whole family was exterminated by the Germans. I grew up at the age of 6. I came to the United States, grew up on 108th Street in Amsterdam. One of us went to Booker T. Washington, a black school. It wasn't Obama. It was
Someday
me.
I want to get you on just about all your spy stories that you can talk about and how you helped.
The point is, I'm just an American citizen, and I'm willing to work again for this country, put my life on the line again. Say, look.
Now, I understand. Let me get you on soon to do a whole discussion about this. We only got about 3 minutes left. Briefly, what do you think really happened with the bizarre Santa Monica mass shooting?
Well, Santa Monica follows the entire protocol of Sandy Hook. It's false flag. It's a liberal community. It's tied into Susan Collins' Hunger Games. You have a directive Hunger Games. There's no such guy as Rogers. You can't have a mentally ill kid kill 7
Why
people,
the last 3 shootings have Hunger Games connections? What's the point of that?
Because of that. Susan Collins was writing that. She was co-opted by the entire system to play out the scenario of anti-gun control, when in fact she was making money on the very notion of Hobbesian killing and people being atavistic. And she is very, very dangerous in this community of anti-gun, and it's not an accident. It's related to Susan Collins, who lives in Newtown.
Well, I was about to say, a lot of those movies are actually they act like they're pro revolt against tyranny, but they're kind of Marxist.
They're Marxist. They're basically stupid. But what I'm saying is this: a mental health kid cannot kill 7 people, wound 13, and stab 3. It's impossible. I ran a maximum security ward at St. Elizabeth's Hospital where I had the criminally insane, and they can't write 140 pages and write a video about themselves. So this is, again, a redux of Newtown. It's a tire false flag. And a Mr. Martinez who talks about craven politicians, it's absurd. I've never used that word, craven. If you look it up, cowardly, nobody talks about that in Greece. So this is, again, a false flag. And you have to go back to Obama, you have to go back to the FBI, you have to go back to Eric Holder.
Well, the FBI, even the New York Times admits, out of 100 bombing plots, 99 were staged by the FBI. That article came out a few years ago.
Well, they have to be accountable again. You have a new director, and I want to know, where's the ATF, Agency for Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms? Where's the FBI? Where's Eric Holder? Where's the subpoenas coming in for false flags? It can't continue, and the president has to be held accountable again.
Well, I want to get you back on soon. Tell us about the new book, posthumously, that you and Clancy worked up, and then
Well, I have 2 excellent writers, George Galderossi, Dick Couch. They're both special. They were in the Navy intelligence. They work in Coronado Beach, and what we did was to create a scenario several years ago with Clancy, he and I, about Syria and the importance of the fact that if Muslims were killing Christians both in Syria and the Middle East, and how Syria, Iran, and Saudi Arabia were all in a cahoots or in playing off one another and creating a civil war in Syria, where the Iranians were fighting Saudi Arabia and where the American government got involved accidentally.
And it all ended up basically happening. It's Out of the Ashes, Dr. Steve Pieczenik?
Out of the Ashes, Tom Clancy's Op Center with George Galderossi and Dick Couch.
All right, thank you so much.
My pleasure.